This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast. It is a Saturday evening, late night edition here on December 27th as we prepare you for the big Browns versus Pittsburgh Steelers game down at the stadium tomorrow. Should be another interesting weather day. They're talking about a weather bomb of wind coming down through the area. It's at some point tomorrow, Sunday. It's supposed to be rainy a little bit. Could even have some severe weather up down this part of Ohio where I'm at here in Columbus. So who knows, right? But the Browns have a very positive record against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home over the last several seasons. They hold a 5-1-1 record against the Squealers. And so that bodes well for this Cleveland Browns team. Now, tonight, the Baltimore Ratbirds are playing the Green Bay Packers. And if Green Bay can beat the Ratbirds, then that secures a victory or the AFC North title for the Pittsburgh Squealers. And thus, they would probably not be playing a majority of their starters like their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. The Browns have players like Myles Garrett, their star defensive end. And despite the Browns having a horrible, terrible record, he is going after the new single season sack record where, of all people, he potentially could sack, that's right, Mason Rudolph, the moron idiot quarterback who started all this shenanigans with Myles Garrett several years ago. That Myles Garrett was then suspended by the NFL because he tore Mason Rudolph's helmet off, amongst a few other things that happened during the battle between the two. Interesting, we talked about it on the Fanatical Elves show earlier this evening with Steve Gill and Sam Britton. Tune into that show if you haven't, here on Apple or on Spotify or anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can listen to the Fanatical Elves Network. You can find us on the X, on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok. Most of those places were at Elves Network, so at ELFZ Network. Interesting, we said that the whole battle between Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett, where he tore his helmet off and all that fun stuff, there's no audio of that supposedly from the NFL, which is absolutely absurd because there's audio in all these games. And we see that every day, after games are played, we see all this audio that is recorded on the field of play. So it's absolutely ridiculous for anybody to believe that the NFL is telling the truth. They're not telling the truth. They're covering up whatever Mason Rudolph said to Myles Garrett from years ago. So with that being said, it would be a tremendous, tremendous story. You talk about karma, and you talk about getting back at the guy that forced you out of the league for a few games because you were suspended. Mason Rudolph deserves all the moments if he gets in there. I'm begging the Green Bay Packers to beat the Ratbirds tonight so that the Steelers can sit their starters so that we can watch Mason Rudolph get attacked on the field of play by Myles Garrett. Maybe Myles Garrett goes off for like 5 or 6 sacks in this game. He totally annihilates the previous record. And, I think Myles Garrett is going after Bruce Smith's record of all-time sacks. Now, I think Myles has something like 110, 112 sacks. I don't know this actual number, but Bruce Smith's number all-time of like all the years that he played in the league, 19 seasons, Bruce Smith had something like 190 sacks. And I think Myles Garrett has his sights set on breaking that record. Ultimately, Myles has only played 9 seasons, so he'll be going into year 10 next season in 2026. So we'll see how it all pans out. But boy, looking forward to seeing what Miles can do tomorrow. Miles has had some success against the Squealers. The Squealers are going to be going to the playoffs more than likely, where they'll lose in the first round of the playoffs like they always do. So, way to go, Pittsburgh Steeler fans. I know you love your Squealers so much, but they're not much better than us Cleveland Browns. Despite the record, you have a measly average record and you squeak by every year and you get in the playoffs. Good for you, but um, you know, we're not happy with the 3-14 record that we're probably going to have at the end of the season, but that's okay. Maybe it's not 3-14. Maybe it's 4-13 if we can beat you Squealers tomorrow. So we'll see how that pans out. The Browns do play the Cincinnati Bungles on the road the following week, but again, that game will be meaningless to both teams outside of the fact it's for bragging rights here in the state of Ohio. So we got this big game tomorrow. Everyone's going to be watching Myles Garrett. Should be a lot of fun. Shedeur Sanders, the rookie quarterback drafted in the 5th round, will be getting his 6th start of the season. He's played in about 7 games now, and I love the kid. And it's bogus. The folks, it was funny. I was listening to Ken Carman the other day on 92.3. There's a video of him going around and his um, description of, people that can't, think that Shedeur is the second coming of God or something, that he's God's gift. It's like, some people are like that with Shedeur, but he points out that Shedeur has multiple times said that he has a lot to learn, continues to try to get better, but he's nowhere close to being perfect. Then there's all the people that want to bring up the fact that he's a 5th round draft pick and he's just a 5th round draft pick. He's no better than that, which is absolutely absurd. And I think Ken Carman's description of him as a developmental, very popular quarterback in this league, where his jersey is um, being bought by more people than any. I have a Shedeur Sanders jersey, so don't tell anybody. So this is he's popular, and we should all just step back, watch, and take it all in. We don't know what's going to happen exactly going into 2026. There's so many questions about this team, this organization, these coaches, these quarterbacks. It's a revolving conversation constantly. And I know there's a lot of Browns fans that want consistency and they think with stability or this idea of consistency that we'll be more successful. Obviously, that's not the case because the last 2 years we're 3-14, maybe 3-14 this year. We're 3-12 currently. There is a lot of optimism, though. I mean, the title of this podcast was about, should what are the positives? What have been the things this season that are good, that can drive this team forward to success in the future and more wins, obviously. The rookie class that this team drafted, and kudos to Andrew Berry for finally getting a few draft picks correct. There's been a lot of conversation about that, and I'm not a real proponent right now of either Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry. Many of you want to give him another year, not most or many. I would say it's 50-50 right now. We want to give him more time. The others of us just want to get rid of them. I suggested that Stefanski deserves a huge lump of coal this year again, and I go back to this conversation that we had a year ago. And if I were to replay some of the podcasts from our Fanatical Elves network and from our colleagues here, we had these same sort of conversations. You've had these conversations as Browns fans a year ago about Stefanski, the same conversation. And we said at that time a year ago that if this season got off to a dicey start, then certainly getting rid of the guy earlier this past year was acceptable or should have been. Somehow everyone seems to forget that and say, "Oh no, we need to give him another year." We should have fired the guy halfway through the season, but we didn't. And I know a lot of this conversation then spills back to the conversation of the ownership of Jimmy Haslam and D Haslam, maybe trying to slow things down, not to try to make knee jerk reactions to their coach and the general manager, but it's not looking good. But getting back to the positive here, Andrew Barry did help draft some of these players that have had very successful seasons. Harold Fannin, the new tight end from Bowling Green, 70 catches for 701 yards. Carson Schwarzenegger leads almost the entire NFL in tackles with 147. How he was considered an alternate at they just announced the names at the Pro Bowl. He should be a starter as a rookie. Phenomenal season. Mason Graham drafted number 3 by the Browns, having a very solid season. Quinshon Judkins, 827 yards rushing. Unfortunately, broke his leg. He should be back in 5 to 6 months. Should be ready to go at the beginning of next season. So there are some real positives here. There are some really good things that we've seen this season, and it's just too bad that these things that the Browns have had this season, the positives with the defense. My colleague Sam Britton made a good point. He looks at the Minnesota Vikings game as a turning point with this Browns team going south, because that was a game where we kind of had a lead. We could have milked the game away, and we couldn't. And then our defense faltered and let Minnesota score. And again, everyone talks about the Browns having this great elite defense. And while there are moments that this defense was elite, they gave up. They were shredded by opponents running the ball at many times. Some of you will say, well, that's because they were on the field and our offense couldn't move the ball. And to some degree, especially early on in the season, that is the case, but not the whole case. And you have to put some blame on what the Browns defense has been doing more recently. Their rushing attack has been or their rushing, how opponents have been rushing against them has been horrible. They've been giving up 150 to 200 yards on the ground for the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's not good. Is it lack of just effort because they're such a crappy team this year? I'm sure that plays into it. I'm sure that does. There's some injuries. Obviously, there's always injuries. There's injuries with all teams, though. So don't use those always as excuse. I think you have to, everything has to mold together. It has to blend in. Everything works together. And my colleague Steve Gill mentioned earlier on the Fanatical Elf show about, the special teams of this Browns team was just dreadful for most of the season. It started horribly for the Browns in week 1 when they gave a kickoff return to the Cincinnati Bengals. You can't have that. You have to have all 3 phases of football working together, and the special teams unit has been atrocious. I'm certain Bubba Ventrone will be fired after the games next week. Why he wasn't fired midstream is crazy. I think we heard the Los Angeles Rams fired their special teams coach, and they have the complete polar opposite record of the Browns. They're successful, and they even fired their special teams coach. So I'd like to have that guy on our team. Anywho, there have been some good things this season. To try to focus on that as you reset and you reboot and you get ready for the 2026 season. If it were me, and I've said this already, Kevin Stefanski should be fired. He should have been fired halfway through this season. Andrew Barry needs to be fired. I think the Haslams would be helping this organization out and the fan base as well if they just parted ways with everybody. Do a reboot. Keep some of these players, keep some of these rookies, but then just redo it. And I know some people fear that would take a long time then to recover from that. And I would say it's the NFL. Why are you worried? Because this team has had no success over the last several seasons with Stefanski and Barry. None. They've had a playoff appearance, yes, 2 years ago, and thank God for Joe Flacco for some magic back in the 2023 season. Be honestly, they probably wouldn't have gotten there without Joe Flacco. You can give Stefanski some credit if you want, or you can give Flacco for being spectacular as well. I'll give him to both of them. But the last 2 years have been dreadful, and he's had 6 seasons now, and this organization is spinning out of control. And the Haslams have got to know that they are building toward this new dome stadium 2029. They've got to get it going, and they're not going anywhere. And with these other people at the lead, they're not. We all see it every day. I talk to Browns fans all the time. You talk to Browns fans all the time. The frustration levels of the fan base are at an all-time high right now. There are a lot of Browns fans that are no longer being fans. If it's because of the Deshaun Watson debacle, there were so many fans that left, and I'm not blaming you for doing that. To spend $230 million on a project that was out of control to begin with was you're playing with you're playing with an opportunity that just wasn't there for you. There were too many negative things with all of that, and it never panned out. It never worked out, and fans grew angrier by the day because of that. So we'll see what happens as this season kind of gets folds up and we move out of it. Does that mean that Stefanski and Barry get fired? Again, I'm one that would, yes, absolutely, they need to be fired. This team needs a reboot. Shedeur Sanders is showing glimpses of improvement. I think most people who are watching these games see that. It's interesting. I wrote an article for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders, and I don't know who you are out there, but some doofus um, decided that people comment on these articles and they don't read the articles. They just read the headlines. And the headline of my article was that Shedeur is must see TV. And he is must see TV because, as I explained, and most of you understand this, that Shedeur is a very popular figure. He's a polarizing figure for whatever reason you want. But for the most part, the reasons include the fact that his father is primetime, and he's been in the spotlight with his dad, or in maybe behind the scenes of his dad for years, and now he's kind of coming out of that shadow and making his own way in the NFL. But somebody was commenting about he really thought that was quite the opposite. That no way is Shedeur must see TV, and criticizing my writing technique supposedly, or my journalism background. Interesting. Oh no, I did not get a journalism degree. So whoever you are out there, um, I like where I went to college, so you can keep your comments to yourself. It's always interesting. People out there in La La Land, when you're behind the keyboard, can say all sorts of not very pleasant things. So why ever you say these things out there, um, whoever you are, I hope that you can move through the negativity of your life and focus on the positive. It is hard being a Browns fan. I am like many of you. It is a struggle to maintain your loyalty, but we do. We do because we love our Browns. We have been there, many of us who are listen to these shows or watch these shows here on YouTube or Facebook or the X, who are in our age bracket, have seen the good of the Browns and have seen the success and seen the pain at the same time. I mean, those moments growing up. And I was recalling my brother-in-law, he and I were talking earlier today, and he unfortunately is a Squealer fan. But in a time before he became committed to the Squealers, and there's reasons for that. But he was at the Jets game, the New York Jets '86 game. That I also attended that game, and that was the game where Bernie Kosar and the Browns playoff game. They were losing late, and were able to spectacularly come back and win in double overtime. Many of you who are Browns fans in our age bracket know that game very well. And I happened to be at that game, but it's funny because he was recalling how, if you can recall the old stadium, Municipal Stadium, the upper parts of that stadium, they would have the large pillars, the steel poles that would hold up the upper deck. And there were seats that were there, like behind the poles. And so if you got one of these seats, you were like literally sitting behind the pole. And he was just describing that, and then how in that game, his father wanted to. He always had this pedigree to leave the games a little early so they could beat the crowd. A lot of us do that, right? You get to the end of the game. Okay, let's leave. Let's get to the rapid. Let's get to our car. Let's get to the parking lot before the rest of the crowd. And in this case, they actually did that too. Because if you remember that game in '86, '87, January of '87, the Browns went down 10 points late with like 4 minutes to go, and it wasn't if it weren't for a couple crazy plays at the end, it would have been the end of it. So they left. A lot. I'm sure they weren't the only people that left, but he was reminding me of how back then too, we didn't have cell phones. You didn't have, instant information, but as you're walking up East Ninth or what, East Third, you could hear the roar of the crowd behind them. And that roar when you leave the stadium and something exciting happens in Municipal Stadium, or in this case, more recently, Huntington Bank Field. So those are the moments, those are the memories. But unfortunately, the thing is, like this, my brother-in-law, he lived over in the Akron or the Canton area. They would get, well, not Canton, they were over in the Youngstown area for a little bit. And so, like Youngstown back then, they would get the Pittsburgh TV channel. So they would always get the Pittsburgh football games. And then the Browns weren't very successful. They didn't have a team in the mid '90s, the late '90s. So they would also carry, when they was down here in Columbus in the Dayton area, they would carry the Pittsburgh games more regularly. So that's how we all become become fans of these teams for different reasons. I'm sorry he became a Squealer fan, but it is what it is. But it is interesting to see where this all leads for the Browns as they end this season. It's Pittsburgh, Cleveland tomorrow, and for many of us older fans, that means something. For the younger fan base, they don't get it. They'll never get it until the Browns have more success again. But this is a big game, and so despite the record of the Browns, they have, hopefully the players can get motivated and play their hearts out and do well. They have played relatively well. Last week against the Buffalo Bills, they did do some really good things. We'll pause here for a quick commercial break, and then we'll finish up the show right after this. And we are back here on the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's a late Saturday evening, getting ready for the Browns versus Steeler game tomorrow down at Huntington Bank Field along the shores of Lake Erie, where it's going to be, from all accounts, it's going to be very windy again. Warmer, but windy, and then get a lot colder by Monday. So we'll see what that does to the playing field tomorrow. But the Browns are, hopefully they get out there and they play their hearts out and they play hard, and they get a win. You don't know in the NFL. I'm excited to see what Shedeur Sanders can do. I think he's improving every week. Quinshon Judkins is injured, so we won't see him. Probably Dylan Sampson is injured, so we're going to see a couple of the running backs, the Rocket Sanders, will be back there running. He did some good things last week, and then his counterpart Williams is his last name. He had some good runs. Shador last week actually led the team with 4 rushes for almost 50 yards himself, and the Browns actually had more rushing yards last week than any other game this season. So that was an interesting takeaway too. Hopefully they won't throw the ball 52 times either. In the Browns game against the Squealers back in Pittsburgh, back at the beginning of the season, Dylan Gabriel was the quarterback. And if you recall, Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 52 times. And right there is a great example of an opportunity where the Browns were in a game. They lost it going away, but they had opportunities, especially early in the game, and they didn't establish the run game. And they relied on a rookie quarterback in playing in Pittsburgh to throw the ball 52 times. That's ridiculous. And that's another reason why I get it blows my mind when I listen to people who are supporting Kevin Stefanski all the time and saying he's so good with the quarterbacks and that we just need to get him the right quarterback to give him that opportunity. You don't give a rookie quarterback 52 times to throw the ball in a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You just don't do that. And Stefanski did that. Stefanski did that. That's why he should not be coaching the Cleveland Browns anymore. If he has success somewhere else, so be it. People are like, well, who are the Browns going to get? Well, we talked about it the other day on the What the Elf show. Why not Primetime himself? I've talked about bringing in Dion before Shador got even drafted by anybody. I mean, the idea that Deion Sanders could be a head coach in the NFL, especially of the team that wherever his son played football, was always a possibility. It's obviously why he ran down and got passed over in the draft. People don't want to talk about him. People want to try to bring this idea of, well, he earned the 5th round draft pick. No, he didn't earn it. He was considered the #1 draft pick for months on end before the draft happened. So it's ridiculous that people want to continually bring up this conversation with Shador. But I do think that there will be a change. And if there is a change at the head coaching position, why not bring in Dion? You have nothing to lose. People that was, oh, you have everything to lose. What do you have to lose? If people are concerned about, well, we're going to be going backwards, we're going to have to start all over again. Who cares? We're not going anywhere right now. You know, we're 3 wins and 14 losses the last 2 seasons, more than likely, in a row. That's 6 wins over the last 2 seasons. What do you have to lose? Nothing. And if it doesn't work out in 2 or 3 years, then do something else because you're building up toward this new dome stadium in 2029. Let's say you put in prime time next year in 2026, give him 2027 and see what he does in 2028. If nothing works out, go get another coach and then you can put that new coach in the nice, bright, shiny new dome stadium of the Cleveland Browns. Can't hurt. Try it. And the owners have lots of money. The Haslams are super duper duper rich. They can do whatever they want right now. And again, I hope that this organization wins. All Browns fans want to see that right now. That is the frustrations are so high right now because it seems like we're just spinning, and spinning, and no one's making any decisions. People were earlier. I was in the Fanatical Elves show with my colleagues, and we were talking about how this conversation about how Stefanski hasn't had an opportunity to really work with his quarterback. The Browns brought in 4 quarterbacks this offseason. Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and they drafted 2 rookie quarterbacks. So the whole storyline, the whole narrative about how Stefanski hasn't had an opportunity to work with quarterbacks is absolutely, completely, and utterly bogus. Stefanski is not very good working with quarterbacks. His success is very limited right now, and we haven't seen it grow. Yes, it's great that maybe Stefanski's working with Shador, and yes, we want to give Shador and Stefanski some props on seeing Shador improve. I'll give Stefanski some credit, but in the end, well, I might want to give Stefanski credit, and like I said, I'll give him some credit. He's not winning football games, and I don't care if he is sits down with Shador every morning, has 2 cups of coffee with him, and they go over every play. And we're seeing Shador improve a little bit. But if it's not producing wins, then you got to move on. And I think that's where most Browns fans are with their thinking right now or with their beliefs about what's going on. I think everybody would love I don't know if they would love, but I think a lot of people, if Stefanski, even though he's boring as hell and he says the same damn thing about getting better every week, if he just could produce a few more wins, then Browns fans united would be much more supportive of this guy. But he's not winning, and Andrew Berry needs to go with him. The two, it's killing the Browns fan base. It's killing this belief in what this organization is doing, and I think the Haslams probably have get that idea. I would hope they would. I would hope they'd read the room and be able to understand that this is the real root of the problem. It's always this feeling like the the general manager, the coach, and the owners like know it more or know it better than the fans that are supporting the organization. Yeah, you might get the degree, you might have played football, and us fans haven't, but at the same time, you got to see how it all molds together. Um, just to point out, and I mentioned this already in previous shows, the game last week against the Buffalo Bills, and I get that Buffalo is 3 hours away, just up the road of Lake Erie. That stadium, I kid you not, and I tweeted it out that 80% of the stadium was Buffalo Bills fans. Now, it might not have been 80, maybe 65%, maybe 60%. But let me tell you, that entire lower bowl that was in the shade was all blue. There were in my area in section 544, there were all Bills fans up there, with the exception of me, who have the season tickets. There was two smaller groups of Browns fans too, probably another maybe 10 people. We have a small section, but of the 50 people in there, I would say 35 to 40 of those people were Bills fans. And the tickets for these games are going for $5. And I don't know what I would assume that the owners saw what they saw in the stadium last week. Would not feel good about that. Yeah, you're selling tickets, you're filling the stands, and it was pretty full, but the stadium was full of Bills fans. And what do you think the stadium's going to look like tomorrow when Pittsburgh comes to town? There's a lot of Pittsburgh fans. They are losing out. The owners better see that, because the Browns fans are not coming to the game. They're not watching the games anymore, and you're losing a lot of valuable time. So they need to get it fixed. That's what we're talking about here. You'd think the Haslams, who are supposed to be smart business people, would see that. And that's why I think that Stefanski will be fired at the end of the season, despite what some people believe, that they're going to give him another chance because, you know, the owners are giving them a mulligan because of what happened with Watson. We'll find out soon enough. All right. Well, until then, now tomorrow morning we'll have a pregame show. Steve Gill and I will be doing that tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern. So tune back into the X page, to Facebook, to YouTube. Listen to us right now on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. And a shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Check their link out on our X page. Until then, have a very good rest of your evening. And remember, folks, too, that's right. Keep smiling. Go Browns.